there, fellow deep divers. Welcome back. Ready for another deep dive into, well, the fascinating and spooky?
Always up for a good haunting.
Well, get ready, because today we're headed to the UK.
Oh, across the pond. Okay.
Yeah, to the rolling hills of Kent, England, to be precise. We're diving into the legend of the Bluebell Hill ghost. Heard of it?
Oh, yeah, the Bluebell Hill ghost. It's one of those stories, just sends chills down your spine.
It's got it all. A tragic accident, a spectral hitchhiker, and this lingering sense of unease that just, well, it clings to the road.
And what always gets me about these local legends, it's how they last. I mean, they really become ingrained in a community. This isn't just some fleeting internet thing. This story's been passed down for generations.
Right. It's like it's woven into the fabric of Kent itself. So we knew we had to take a deep dive, especially when we came across this recent article from Kent Online. They're a local news source, really plugged into the area. They've been covering the Bluebell Hill story for years. And, well, it's packed with firsthand accounts, spooky details. Good stuff.
The kind of stuff that makes for a chilling deep dive.
Exactly. Now, before we get to the ghostly encounters, the vanishing hitchhikers, all that good stuff, we got to rewind. We have to talk about the very real tragedy that seems to be at the heart of this whole legend.
Right. Got to understand the human element of the story, the very real lives touched by tragedy, because, what's a good ghost story without a little bit of, well, heartbreak?
Exactly. So let's go back to 1965. It's November, a chilly night. Picture this. 3 young women, Suzanne Brown, Judith Lingham, and Patricia Ferguson, they're driving along the A229, cutting through Bluebell Hill.
Okay, setting the scene, I can see it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Suzanne, she's not just out for a drive, it's her hen night. Celebrating with her friends, the eve of her wedding.
Wow, so full of life on the verge of this new chapter. It's just heartbreaking to think about what happened next.
It really is. They were driving in a Ford Cortina, and suddenly the car spun out of control, collided head-on with a Jaguar coming from the other direction. It was a horrific accident. All 3 women, they lost their lives.
Awful. Just awful. And for the longest time, I actually thought Suzanne was the one who died instantly at the scene because it was her ghost being sighted. But it was Judith, right?
You're right. It's Judith who died on impact. Suzanne and Patricia, they clung to life for a few more days, but tragically passed away later in the hospital.
Just adds another layer of sadness, It wasn't just a sudden loss, but this agonizing weight clinging to hope that ultimately ended in heartbreak.
You said it. It's a grim reminder, of how fragile life really is. And I think maybe that's why this particular story, it just stays with you.
It really does. 3 young lives, full of promise, cut short. It's no wonder this event would cast such a long shadow, become intertwined with the stories that would follow.
Absolutely. And, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What is it about Bluebell Hill itself?
Yeah, I mean, even before this accident, the area had this reputation. This kind of unsettling feeling, wouldn't you say?
Right. It's like this accident, this tragedy, it's almost like it tapped into something, I don't know, something older, something spectral.
Yeah, it's almost like this tragedy amplified what was already there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And amplify it did, because pretty soon after the accident, well, that's when the story started.
People started experiencing some really strange, really unsettling things.
Oh, yeah, and it wasn't just random spooky happenings. These occurrences, they often seem to echo the tragedy of 1965.
Especially the hitchhiker.
Right, the hitchhiker.
Yeah.
People kept seeing a lone female hitchhiker, often described as a young woman, looking for a ride, and get this, often near the spot where the accident happened.
Chilling.
Yeah, it gives me chills just talking about it. And I don't know, for me, it's those echoes, those repeating patterns that really get me thinking, If it were just some random ghost sighting, you wouldn't expect that level of detail across so many years.
Right. You're onto something. Because it's not just 1 or 2 stories. You have things like, well, the article talks about this guy, Bob Vanderpeer, back in 1972. He's driving along Bluebell Hill, picks up a hitchhiker, and then, poof, she just vanishes from his car.
Gone. Vanished. It's crazy.
And it's not just him. There's another account from 1971, this guy, James Skeen, driving home from work, when a young woman suddenly appears in front of his car. He gives her a lift, but just like that, when he arrives, she's gone.
It's enough to make you, never want to pick up a hitchhiker again.
Right. You start to see these stories as not just, spooky tales, but also a bit of a warning, like be careful out there, especially on Bluebell Hill.
I get that. It's like a way of respecting the history of the place, honoring the memory of those who've been lost.
Exactly. It's all intertwined, you see, the history, the tragedy, the stories. But It's not just the 1965 accident that has people talking. Bluebell Hill has a deeper history, a history that might just go hand in hand with these unsettling events.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about all the stories this hill could tell, if it could talk.
Oh, absolutely. And, it's not just those three women, the ones from 65, that people connect to the strange happenings on Bluebell Hill. There are stories going way back, even before that accident, even back to the 1930s.
Wow, the 1930s. So we're talking, what, decades before that tragic accident?
Hmm.
Makes you wonder if it's not just a coincidence, right? Like Bluebell Hill itself has some, I don't know, some kind of pull, some energy that attracts these eerie events.
It's a common theme, honestly. You see it all over the world. Certain places just sort of become these hot spots for the supernatural, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like crossroads of the strange and unusual.
Exactly. And I think it's because these places, often they're isolated, shrouded in mystery. They tap into something primal, something deep within us that both fears and is drawn to the unknown.
It's like our fascination with these stories, with ghosts and hauntings, it's a way of confronting our own mortality.
100%. Makes you think about life and death, about what might be out there beyond what we can see and touch. It's both terrifying and exhilarating.
Speaking of terrifying and exhilarating, the article we read mentioned this filmmaker, Sonia Roseman. She actually made a film about the Bluebell Hill ghost back in 2014.
Oh, yes. Sonia Roseman. I'd almost forgotten about her. The Ghost of Bluebell Hill. A bit on the nose with the title, don't you think?
Yeah, a little bit. But hey, it gets the point across, right?
Hmm.
But here's the thing. While she was making the film, she had some strange experiences herself. Said some of the pictures she took, the ones that ended up in the movie, they survived a fire in her flat.
Really?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
now that's spooky. See, those little details, those personal touches that make these stories stick with you.
Right. It's like suddenly it's not just folklore, it's someone's real life. It blurs that line between legend and reality, which I think is what makes it also fascinating, but also, well, a little bit unsettling.
It's a good kind of unsettling, though. And I think
Ooh.
that's what we keep coming back to with these stories, with these deep dives. It's a way to explore those parts of ourselves.
Hmm.
The parts that are curious about the unknown, the parts that get a little thrill from a good ghost story.
Absolutely. It's like a journey into the heart of what makes us human, our hopes, our fears, our fascination with things that go bump in the night. So, to all you deep divers out there, as we wrap up our exploration of the Bluebell Hill ghost, here's a thought. Next time you're driving down a dark road, late at night, maybe think twice before you offer a stranger a ride. You never know who or what might be out there. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep an ear out for those whispers from the unknown.